All right, Professor. So taking a little bit of a risk with this. I'm going to do a video format for my paper, and it's going to be less written down and more. It's very written down because I do need bullet points, right? I can't just spout. I'm not that good at all, but I do better. Typically, I do better speaking. Especially like in front of a classroom, I'd probably do better at that than I would in a paper. I'm not great, but oftentimes for some reason, in comparison to my peers, I'm a little bit better. I guess that's kind of a good thing for me in some places, but it's been hard sometimes. So I'm taking a little bit of risk with this. I'm hoping you'll accept this. Did some research. It takes about 6.5 minutes to read a 4-page paper, so I'll try and shoot for about 10 minutes at least. The last video I did for a professor that I thought was going to take 10 minutes, I took almost 40. So I'll try and bring some of that out, right? Because I am pretty excited actually about this. I'm not excited about doing an assignment, but I love the topic that I decided to go with. So let's delve into that. So for my disrupting thing, right, my EPP, what I went with is fossil fuels, basically. That my research question was directed towards what kind of fossil fuels. What's the future for a fuel, right? It doesn't have to be a fossil fuel, but what is the future? Is it fossil fuels? Because if you look at some of the big players like Exxon, or in particular BP, which I think is the biggest one out there, they think at our rate and our increasing rate especially, because it is increasing. I mean, with diesel alone, we burn like 170 million gallons a day, and just in the U.S. It's insane. I saw that in the video. For name dropping, you can look at reference. Will this still work if I pull something else up? I hope so. Yes. Number 5 is the YouTube. Yeah. Anyway. Sorry, back to the learning here. So my reference for that would be number 5. We use 170 million gallons of diesel alone a day. It's insane. So that is not going to last, right? BP says we have 56 years until we are likely out of fossil fuels. And I mean, fossil fuels, it's cool to say that, but it's not a fossil, and it doesn't come from animals usually. Most of the oil out there has come from plants, from algae especially, which is interesting, right? Because algae is not something that was only around in the Jurassic period. It's been around, and it still is around. Algae will always be around wherever there is carbon-based life. So that was my research question. That's what I started off with. I wanted to know what our next step was as basically humanity. What we're going to build with next. I mean, it can't be fuels, it can't be plastics forever. It can be plastic. It can't be fossil. It can't be oil-based plastics, right? We got to make something new. So that's what I started out with. So the problem arena is, it is a big one. We're talking. This is a problem for everyone. I mean, there's no quantifier there. It's a problem for everyone in every single sector of economy, every single sector of an industry, personal life. The economy would fall apart into utter chaos without fuel. And I'm already at 4 minutes. Okay. So some of the things that helped me think about this were things like, how am I going to look for new fuel out there, and it's not like I'm on a new idea, right? If it was easy, it would already be done. That's one of the system thinking, I think, or maybe it's the idea. Anyway, I think it's the systems. If it was easy, it would already be done. It's not easy. And even some of the hard things have already been done. Some of those things that we will talk about later are things called CSPs, which stand for concentrated solar power. It's basically just it's just the name. You're concentrating solar energy into a particular spot for a reason. Usually, you're taking salt and you're melting it, which is pretty cool. And then that melted salt is really hot. It's like 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll see that on the article from Google Scholar, which is number 4. So there's my in-text citation. My next systems thinking was, today's problems are yesterday's solutions, and that's very true with this. That is so true with fossil fuels. You go back to when they created the engine, the internal combustion engine. It was a solution to power things. And that's all it was. It was just a very simple solution. The combustion engine did a lot, but the steam engine, the steam engine did more for science than science did for the steam engine. There's not a lot of science in the steam engine, but it did a lot for science. It's just something interesting because the solution then is now becoming our problem. The solution then was just get more fossil fuels out there, be more productive, build industry. And now we're at this problem where our industry, as a global nation, is so strong. But it is really coming at a cost to our world, our way of life, especially animals' way of life. We are destroying habitats left and right. And I'm not, a tree-hugging warmonger in this sense, but as far as politics go, I'm a very moderate person, so moderate. I think moderation in all things, right? I think that's one of the principles here in Utah. It's probably, at least it should be, right? I think it's in there in that book, but getting off topic here. The easy way out often leads back in, and that is very true. That's one of the system thinking. It's like number 2 or something. Actually, it's number 4 on the list, but that is so true too. Easy way out is just to ignore it, leave it to the next generation, and that's always going to lead us back here where we are, and it's only going to get worse. And 56 years. That's not taking into account, natural disasters, snowplow. That's not taking into account natural disasters and other problems that we're going to face that might lower our ability to access, those, for example, maybe those water rigs, rising ocean is going to create a more malevolent ocean. Maybe we won't be able to have offshore rigs anymore. All of a sudden, that 56 years leads to, we got 10 years left, and we have 10 years to basically go to the moon, right? Something like this, that we're trying to build a new, sustainable, efficient, and affordable energy source. It's insane. Sure, we created fission, nuclear fission in 4 years or something like that. But we had, Albert Einstein, and that he was working on that, and we also had those Germans that we sort of stole, right, to work on our plan. It's just something that needs to happen today, right? And unfortunately, I'm just not quite smart enough to get there. But it's not really brains that get you there. It's more like determination with this kind of thing. That's something I want to get into later, actually. My system map. So, because this is more of an oral display instead of a visual, I was going to create a system map, but it didn't quite mesh with the vibe, and I also could not quite figure out how to connect everything on paper. So in my head, it basically went along these lines I've been explaining already, where we've got this problem, right? Pretty much all this comes from the problem that we've created, which is a fossil fuel dependency. And while biofuels do currently exist, and while they are renewable, and they work very well. You can interchange them in any. The diesels, for example, in particular, are interchangeable. You can put any true biofuel diesel into a normal diesel engine, and it will run fine. If not, occasionally it will run cleaner. Not always, because it depends on the quality, like everything else, right? But we have this dependency that's leading to these problems, where in 50 years we won't have this option to be dependent on a millennia, or no, that's 1,000, so thousands of years old of heat and compress on algae, right? We have to make something fresh from fresh algae, for example. The problem with current biofuels, and this leads on to my next thing, which is current biofuels. Current biofuels, while they are great, they're just not cost effective yet. And you see this because it was this huge rage in like early 2000s, and you'll see this on, if I can cite that same YouTube number 3. No, not number 3. Number 6. If you look at my annotated bibliography, number 6, you'll see that. You can watch the videos. I wouldn't recommend it because I am way more entertaining than those videos. Because look at my beautiful face. Anyway, so you got these biofuels that are renewable, but they're not cost effective. Unfortunately, plants are not cost effective when it comes to sunlight. Sunlight comes in, and the best plants, can only capture 5%, and that's cited on number 2. No, excuse me. That's number 1. Yeah. Possibly number 3. No, definitely number 1. So, number 1, you'll see a list or something like that. It helps to break down the percentages that plants can take, and possibly also number 1. Britannica, number 1. Great source there. Plants are not great at fuel efficient and solar light efficient things. In fact, they're at their best are like 5%. But algae, on average, is 3% effective at capturing the sunlight and turning that sunlight then into energy, which is in the form of biofuels and diesel. We're talking about lipids, and this is cited in the YouTubes down there. Lipids are what create our actual energy, and algae is 40% lipid, which is very high. I mean, that is like the highest of any living organism on Earth, which makes that efficient, but it doesn't make the whole system efficient. So then we run into this problem, back to that system map of fossil fuels are running out. We got biofuels that we can do, and we will have to do, and we definitely can do, but it'll be cost inefficient. Which, I mean, ultimately you just have to eat the cost, right? that's just going to get passed from the supplier down to the consumer. Consumer is going to pay an extra $2 a gallon, right? That's just the simple math there. And that's not a citation. That is just my finance brain working. That's just life. But ideally, right? All right. So anyway, moving on from that in my systems map, right? In my little head, we go from biofuels to from fossil dependency to biofuel possibility down to my research, which led me to eventually figure out, because I thought algae was the game. I thought that was a game changer. I thought we could rest on it, use that to support us in our crutch, and it would keep us through. But it turns out there are better options. For example, concentrated solar power plant, or whatever that CSP stands for, is about 20, depending on where you do it. And this is one of those really interesting articles actually sourced. It's that Google one, Google Scholar one. There it is, number 4. Ideally you'd want those salt pillars in a desert area, which you're like, oh, duh. But I mean, if we're talking about like photovoltaic, as in just solar panels, you actually want them in a cold climate, because cold helps you to conduct electricity, and something as much as like 18% increase. It's drastic. And I learned this back in 8th grade, so, or senior year. That was a while ago. Either way, huge increase in your solar efficiency. But anyway, on average, the solar panels can take about 20%. So they're much more efficient than those plants. Right, we're talking about how much sun energy they can convert into energy that we can use. Basically is what I'm talking about when I talk about percentages. So we're at fossil fuels, which is, free. There's no, I'm bouncing the camera. There's no cost from the sun right now. Biofuels, we have a 3% intake from the sun, kind of at our max. We don't get much more than that. CSP, we can get like 20%. In the desert, we can get, I believe the article said 26%, or it's like 25.8%, something like that. Fusion, we won't talk about that yet. In a couple minutes, we'll get there. So, talk about my system map. That's kind of the basic rundown. We went from fossil fuel dependency, biofuel possibility, to a hopeful CSP, leading into, well, maybe CSP isn't the best. What if, so prototype 1 would be my CSP. Actually, no, algae would be my prototype 1, honestly, because that's what the first thing I thought would be the answer, would be algae. Because, I mean, they've been around since the early 2000s. We've been studying them. There's been articles since then. There's a lot of articles in like 2011 to 2013, which is interesting because 2008 really marked kind of a dip. So I'm guessing by then it kind of picked up. I was still pretty young then, so I don't really remember a whole lot, right? But it's basically, when I was looking at articles, it's kind of how it went a lot in 2011, 2013. And not as much recently. Like in the last year, they're all kind of underperforming articles. They're just like bland. They're not doing anything new, is what I'm trying to say. The salt pillars, really amazing things. Google CSP plant on Google Images, pull that up. It is a huge array of parabolic shaped mirrors pointed at a clear salt pillar, and it is just salt melting, and it's really cool. And they can last through the night because that salt is 1,000 degrees in a well-insulated box, basically, right? And that is and then you put water over that, in a pipe, not just don't just put water in boiling salt, make an ocean or something. And then anyway, so you just run water over that, and then it boils. That turns that into steam, and then it's a normal steam cycle from there, right? It's not very hard to figure out. Typically one of those in deserts, like I was saying. But my concept map, my prototype 2, it's a prototype 2 concept map moving along here, is fusion. Now we already have nuclear power plants, nuclear fission power plants, because nuclear just means it's nucleic, it's a nucleus, it's a small, very small atom, right? That's all it is. That's really all it is. But fission, we have lots of fission power plants. We have I don't want to say a number, but we have a bunch in the U.S. And France is entirely nuclear because they're awesome and they want clean energy. Whereas in the U.S. we insist on burning black stone called coal, and that just pumps, whatever. China on average has they build another coal power plant every 3 months or something, just pumping them out. Anyway, fusion is the next moon landing. All right, it is the next. If you see that first YouTube, is biofuel the next big thing. You'll see that he talks about it too. Fusion is the next step. It is our prototype too. It is what we want. And we've been trying, for 50 years to try to do this. It is so hard. It takes so much energy to get this done. It is so inefficient. It is energy negative, or however you would conjugate that to be the right way, right? Oh, I didn't mention the rules of ideation. So my 2 rules of ideation I was working with were, problems hold their own solutions. Problems hold their own solutions, and you push through the frothy stuff. I really like to push through the frothy stuff because we're talking about algae, and an algae is gross and it's frothy, and it's also really dense, but it's also frothy, right? He's back. So things like this that I was thinking about when I was researching. These articles aren't the easiest to read, and so you do have to push through some of the information there to get to the things you really want. Control F, to find the information you really need. If I was building this stuff, if I was building a fusion power plant, there would be so much frothy stuff to push through. So much. I would have to go through the government organizations. You'd have to push through, you have to get grants. There's no way anybody can afford this. This is a government run. We need tax-paying dollars to do this, right? This is the next moon landing. This is the next satellite. Satellites, I have an opinion about that, but satellites change the world, and we gave that for free. We did. We don't charge countries to use our satellites. Everybody benefits from worldwide free satellite access. Pretty cool stuff. But we put that in the sky. We need to figure out how to get the sun, because the sun creates fusion, which creates all this energy. Interesting thing about fission versus fusion. Fission is a splitting of an atom. You have a very, very dense atom. It does need to be unstable, which is why you'd have isotopes of those atoms. I was originally an engineering major, and I loved this stuff. I did logics of chemistry, right? And I've taken chemistry twice now in 2 different colleges because people hate taking whatever. Anyway, so. Fission, you split the atom, you shoot an electron, or actually you shoot a proton, I believe, at a dense particle that splits the uranium or the plutonium, whatever you want to use, and that creates a lot of energy. And if you use this in a bomb, it creates an explosion. It doesn't have to create an explosion; it just releases energy. And if you can control that release, then you can control it and turn it into usable energy instead of just making a bomb. That's why these plants don't just explode. The Chernobyl, they were being silly, more or less. They were being kind of careless. That's why it exploded, and a lot of Russians died. Anyway, we're getting off topic again. Thank you. Okay, got through all of that stuff I wanted to get through. Good. But fusion would be the next thing. That is what, as a species, we should work towards, is fusion. Because if it's true that we only have 50 years left of fossil fuels, we don't have a lot of time. I mean, that's within my lifetime. That's within your lifetime still. I mean, this is close. We're cutting this stuff close. I did make I'm a huge poster guy, so I love making posters. I don't know if this is going to flip so you can actually see it. It says disrupting fuels. I can't read that very well. Solution creation. Oh yeah, and then this is my awesome drawing here of a CSP. This is the salt pillar. This is the ground. All around it on the ground there's parabolic mirrors pointing up, and there's salt inside the very top here. And then water will come up and circulate, from what I understand. Water will circulate around the salt and pull off the energy it needs, and that will work all night, which is amazing. That's the problem with current solar technology with the solar farms, is that they don't create energy at night. And so you have all this awesome energy during the day, but then at night, when people need energy the most, I mean, realistically, they need more electricity at night. There's a huge surge. You got kids coming home playing video games. You got parents at home on telephones, stuff like this, right? These salt towers can handle this. Excuse me. This is fusion. It's a great example. Basically, in fusion, all that happens is you take two small, like hydrogen and hydrogen, for example, which is what the sun does. The sun takes hydrogen and hydrogen, which is it's one proton and one electron. It's like the tiniest. I think there might be one neutron in there. It's the tiniest atom you get. It's an atomic weight of 1, which means that realistically there's no neutrons in there. It's just a proton and an electron that balances each other. But when you combine them, you get helium, but you also get extra mass, because nothing is perfect. There's not a single perfect thing, whether it's chemistry, whether it's physics, whether it's just atoms. You add 1 and 1 does not equal 2. 1 and 1 equals 2.2, for example. And that 0.2 is the energy. Basically, you add that 1 and 1, you get that 2.2. That 0.2 shoots off the molecule and becomes energy. Because, as we know, mass, conservation of, the laws of physics, conservation of mass and energy. If you lose mass, you don't lose mass. It just becomes energy. Basically, energy equals mass, right? There's an equation for it. I don't remember it. But there's no such thing as a loss of either of those. You have to have an equivalent gain of energy to your loss of mass, or vice versa. So really interesting, really simple, really interesting and perplex applications. Fusion, I think we've done it successfully on Earth, but it costs so much energy compared to how much we got from it. So that is our next moon landing. That is, as like I already said, as a humanity, we need to focus on. We can get that done. I mean, we would have our own sun on Earth. It'd be so cool. And last but not least, this is just an example. Really poorly, it's not really poorly drawn. It's just kind of poorly drawn. Example of algae. Now, this is actually good in Mars. For example, if we're going to Mars, they have lots of ice caps. And more or less, those ice caps are just CO2. It's just frozen CO2. And so a lot of people, a lot of the ideas around how do we make Mars habitable or inhabitable for humans is how do we create an atmosphere? How do we terraform, or in other words, how do we build Mars into another Earth Mars, more or less. And a really interesting thing I saw in a YouTube comment underneath that John, where is it at? The YouTube that John did, Joe, number 6, looks like. Joe Scott. One of the comments underneath there talked about using that CO2 and algae, because algae takes CO2 and turns it into oxygen, which is like mind-blowing, right? Anyway, like most plants, right? Anyway, so we could create an atmosphere using ingredients already on Mars, just bringing algae with us. So, I mean, why does it need to be our next moon landing? This could be our next Mars landing, right? Really cool idea. I mean, the possibilities, and that's a great example of prototype idea, right? That's prototype 3. Right? This is beyond what I was thinking, right? This guy is smart. But this is stuff like this, where today's problems, yesterday's solutions, this whole idea of ideas just get better, and maybe perhaps you don't look at the problem. That really comes into play. So, I said I did this in 10 minutes, and it's been 30. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I answered the questions. I will turn in that annotated bibliography. It's actually already done. And also I will turn in that and I will also turn in that final rubric. I don't know if you'll allow it, but I would love to do the final rubric explanation here. But perhaps not. It's been long enough. I'll let you read that. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got some dishes done listening to me on your headphones or something. You just watch me the whole time. I know I'm beautiful, but I'm not really. I'm not. So you have a great night or day. Thank you for dealing with me this whole semester. I haven't been the most active or proactive. I've been very reactive this semester. That's something that I struggle with as the semester goes and continues on. It's just too much time for me to maintain interest in any subject, even the ones I really like finance. I'm struggling. But you have a great rest of your holiday break, And thank you for always being willing to help me and respond to my emails. And thank you.